not the host. Oh.
Okay, should be live now.
Yep. I'm going to tell them all then.
Go ahead.
You are now live. You can call the meeting to order.
No problem.
So Warden Vanderwall, we're live now if you wanted to call the meeting to order.
Okay, we are going live. I'd like to call this, I guess it's a special council meeting, isn't it?
That's correct.
To order, I'm sure you have a resolution.
There's no resolution, special
Okay.
council meeting. It doesn't require an agenda.
Okay. Do I need to ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
Yes,
General
you do.
nature thereof?
Yes, you do.
Is there? Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? I don't know how I would see. I guess somebody would have to say it. Hearing none, I'll call on Miss Lisa Severinson from the Eastern Ontario Regional Network Cell Gap Coverage Project to go through the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Jim Pine and David Fell will be presenting on behalf of EORN. So I'll turn it over to Jim and David. Thanks very much for having us.
And I do want to welcome everybody who's joining us today to go through this presentation. Thank you very much. Go ahead then, Jim.
Thanks very much, Your Honor, members of council and local councils. As Lisa said, thanks very much for the opportunity to present today. We have a slide deck along with our partners from Rogers Communications. So maybe if we could throw those decks up, we can get started. I have a very short piece, you'll be happy to know, of the presentation. The bulk of it is going to be David Fell on behalf of EORN talking about the cell project, and Luis Ortega from Rogers Communications, I believe, is going to do the Rogers piece. So if someone could put the slide deck up, I hope you have it. So, do we have it? Lisa, do you have it?
I can pull it up.
Jeanette, is there somebody that could be doing the sharing for us?
Someone from your end could allow, yeah, it's going to have to allow us to share, Fran.
Chris, are you still around?
Lisa
Or
does
Jeanette?
have the ability to, everybody has the ability to share their screen. It should just be at the very bottom, whoever, I believe Lisa was the one who had the slides for your presentation.
Okay.
Bear with me. I don't have very good internet and it's trying to call that slide up. So my apologies. One moment.
Lisa, I have the slide deck available. Would you like me to share my screen?
That would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay, are you seeing it?
Yeah, that's great, Jeanette.
Perfect.
Thanks very much. So maybe you can go to the next slide. So as I said, the real show today is really about the Cell Gap project. I'm going to be very brief around the work that we're doing in trying to advocate for the GIG project and the funding streams. And then I'll turn it over to David as soon as I'm done, unless there's some questions. So go to the next slide. And the next slide. Thanks, Jeanette. So just to recap for everyone, what we talk and what we mean when we say the GIG project that EORN is proposing to both the federal and provincial governments is really another public-private partnership project that the EORN would deliver. And the idea is to get at least a gig or 1,000 megabits of speed to what we call 95% of the demand area. And I'll show you that in just a slide. That would be done through a fiber to the home technology or a cable equivalent. We have a lot of places to connect across Eastern Ontario, including in Frontenac County, of course, about 540,000 premises that we have as part of our project proposal to get this wired solution. It would deliver more than 20 times the minimum standard that the CRTC has set for service to Canadians, which is their minimum is 50 megabits down, 10 megabits up. The idea around building a project that would deliver much more than the minimum, of course, is to future-proof it, to make sure that we build it once and build it well and fix it for a generation, as the slide said. And you know, in our region, and no surprise to any of you, that there are a lot of premises that are underserved, whether it's a cottage or a medical office or your home. We have about 30% of all of those underserved or unserved premises across Ontario. There's about 220,000. That's just at the basic CRTC minimum. We want to go much further than that, of course, by building in the fiber project that would deliver a gig. It just makes sense for us, we think, to deliver the right technology once and get it done and fix the problem for a good long period of time. So that's the next slide. We use this picture just to really explain it. This is probably the best way to do that. All of the pink area is part of our demand area. So there's a house, there's a cottage, there's an institution, it's where people live or work around the region, and that creates demand for bandwidth. So the pink area is where we want to go. We need to go, those 540,000 locations, and including the areas that are in green. The areas in green are where Canada tells us right now that you could get 50/10, the CRTC minimum. So even at that, you know that our area is woefully underserved at the CRTC minimum. There's not a lot of green, but we want to do this right, as we said, and do a gig project that would get 1,000 megabits of speed to people. And that's the pink area is where we've got to go. Pink and green actually is where we have to go to get the job done. Big area, but that's the project area. Next slide. We've been at this for a little while. The Warden's Caucus asked EORN to look at developing a project to deliver a gig, and they also asked us to cost out doing a smaller project of the 50/10, but settled on the gig as the standard that they expect that our residents across Eastern Ontario and our businesses should receive. After all, in some of the bigger urban areas, people can get this kind of speed now, and business can get it. So the EOWC asked the EORN group and the board to create a project that would deliver this higher standard, the gig standard, across our region. I say we started in 2010. We've submitted our business case proposals to both Canada and Ontario back in 2020. We resubmitted again this spring to take advantage, we thought, of the new funding that the province and the federal governments have announced in UBF and in the provincial programs. It's a project that's going to cost between 1.2 billion and 1.6 billion. But we think it's going to be on the lower end, given some of the things that the province is doing around pole acquisition timelines and the cost of hanging fiber on poles, or making some improvements there. But it is a big project, but it would serve us for long into the future if we built it right the first time. So it takes time to get these projects up and running and approved, but we think we need to get an answer very soon, one way or the other, on whether this is going to be a project they'll support. Next slide. You know, EORN does a lot of work before we get to the project proposal stage. And one of the things that we did with the GIG project was to commission 2 independent economic studies to say, to ask the question, would this make a difference for us in the region if we did this GIG project? Both independent studies came back with similar conclusions. And the answer is yes, in a big way, it would make a big difference to our region. It will create lots of jobs. They have a number between 9,600 and 16,000 job equivalents during the construction years. It's going to create a lot of economic activity through employment earnings, you know, between $400 and $720 million, money that gets spent in our communities as the project's being built. For local municipalities, it means potentially new property tax revenues by attracting new people into the region, because it's really the number one issue that we hear when people want to come to a community is, what's my internet connection going to be like? And it raises property values, as you can see, by about 7% is the estimate. We also think it's a really good deal for Canada and for Ontario as funding partners. We've asked both of them for $200 million each. But the studies say that over 5 years, in 5 short years, once the project's done, the governments are going to recoup their money in additional tax revenues because of the activity, economic activity that it generates. So both Canada and Ontario get their money back pretty quickly in terms of investment. So again, we think it's a very good deal for all of us, including both the federal and provincial governments. But it certainly makes a big difference for us. There's other things that we haven't included on this slide that are positive benefits, like an estimate of saving about $170 million a year in healthcare costs, because we can deliver telemedicine more effectively and more efficiently. So they've done a lot of work. The economists have done a lot of work to look at the project, and it is absolutely a net winner if we can do it. Next slide. Just to talk about how we're going to fund this in a traditional way that EORN works. We've asked Canada and Ontario to contribute. As I've mentioned, we'd like to see the infrastructure bank play a big role in this, about $400 million to support funding to the private sector companies we would work with. And then, of course, we need to raise about $400 million from the private sector, but that's what EORN does on a regular basis. So that gets us to the $1.2 billion. And just to make a comment about the $400 million ask of Canada and Ontario, it's really only about 5.7%, as the slide said, of the total subsidy dollars that are now available for broadband. Canada and Ontario together have about $7 billion available. So we don't think our ask is out of this world or outrageous. It's modest in that sense. We're just looking for less than 6% of what's available to do a project that would deliver $1.2 billion in investment. So we think it's a fair and reasonable request, and we're hoping that they support it. Next. The next 2 slides, I'll go through them quickly. I've already mentioned them. There's just some information that you may already know about funding streams that are available from Canada and Ontario. If we can just go to the next slide. I think the first one is the provincial funding. You know that there's already the ICON program out there. Provincial government upped its contribution to about $300 million total last year. And in this year's budget, they've added a significant amount of new money for broadband, another $2.8 billion or so in their pot. So we know the money's available to do a project like the GIG from the province. And likewise, if you go to the next slide, Canada increased its contribution, or its amount to its universal broadband fund, by another $1 billion. So there's about $2.75 billion from the federal government that's now available. Now that's across the country, of course, but again, we're just asking for a small portion of that, 200 million of that 2.75 billion, to come our way in Eastern Ontario. So that's the kind of funding that's available from both the federal and provincial governments. And as I said, for the GIG project, we're seeking what we think is a modest amount to do the GIG project. So I want to thank Frontenac County and its member municipalities. You guys have been very active in supporting our advocacy around the GIG project, and of course for everything that we've been doing in EORN over the years. But your appreciated, and I know that it gets the attention that it deserves. And I think at that point, I will stop and just take any questions if there are any. I turned my video off because the internet's unstable. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Jim Pine?
Ron, it's Dennis. I've got one.
Go ahead.
Jim, one of the MPPs that we met with kind of got off on the sidetrack saying that we should all sign up for Elon Musk's system of satellites. And I pointed out that it didn't work out too good for us when we outsourced all of our vaccine production to the US. So I think by the end of the discussion, he changed his mind. But how do you handle those kind of questions when you get MPs and MPPs coming up with that kind of stuff?
Well, thanks. That's a very good question. I guess in a word, education, to give them a better understanding of the kind of technologies to talk about. Satellite technology will be a part of all solutions, I think. It has been in our previous project, and it probably will be to a certain extent here. But what we want to do is to make sure that you can if you put a piece of fiber optic cable to someone's home or their business, it's kind of like electricity. When you turn that switch on, you expect the power to come on and the lights to come on. And if you can connect it with a hardwire piece of fiber, when people turn their computers on, they're going to get the service that they need, and they're going to get the amount of service that they need, the amount of bandwidth. So it's the gold standard of technology, and why shouldn't people in our communities, get that same kind of a service availability that's in some of the bigger centers? But satellites are there. There will be some that we just simply can't get to with a piece of wire, I guess, or in the case of fixed wireless with a line of sight to a tower. But I think you're right, Dennis. It's not the panacea for everything. And we know that with, the world is changing to, technologies that's going to allow us to have autonomous vehicles. We know that fiber is the backbone of all of those technologies that are going to come forward. So investing in fiber is just the right thing to do for now, and certainly for the long into the future, in our opinion.
Okay. If there's no other questions, who is going to take us through the timeline project? Was that David or you, Jim?
I'm gonna pass it over to David to talk about the cell project, and Rogers has a presentation as well.
Okay.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk about the gig, and thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. I actually saw Councillor Cameron and Councillor Martin had their hands up on screen to ask a question. So if it's about the gig, I'd be Jim or I'd be happy to answer that now. If
they can go ahead, I can't see that. So if you see that, somebody has a question, they're just going to have to speak up.
Sure. Oh, okay. I'll start off, Ron. Brian Cameron here. I just would, this is a question I've had for a while, and I don't think I've received an answer that makes me understand this better. We talk about, I think that the term is 95% coverage at a certain standard. That's what the CRTC said, and that's the benchmark we're looking at. I'd like to know if there's some clarification as to whether that's 95% of the population or 95% of a geographical area. Let me explain. There's 1.7 million people in Eastern Ontario. And quite frankly, when you go through the large cities, you're actually going to use up 70% of that population. And you could conceivably hit 95% by just giving high-speed access to anybody in a village larger than Verona and ignoring the rest. So I have some concerns about that. I hope I'm wrong in my interpretation, but I stand to be corrected, and I gladly be corrected if there's information to the contrary.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. What we're proposing is 95% of all of the premises, so your home or your business, or could be a school, could be an institution of that kind, across the demand area. That map that we showed you, the pink map with all the pink areas on it, at least 95% with a wire, because you're quite right. We don't want to measure it on population. It's the way EORN does it. We measure demand, and demand is created by homes and businesses where people are, whether they're working or whether it's their residential unit or it's theirs in this case a seasonal cottage. We've included those as well. So it really is about places, not people, if I can put it that way, Councillor. And I think that might answer your question, because we would
Actually,
agree.
it does. And
Okay.
yeah, I appreciate that because it's a positive answer as far as I'm concerned. So I appreciate that.
Councillor Martin also, I believe, had a question.
It was a related question. My question is, are we talking about fiber hubs with existing copper to all these homes? Or are we talking about actually rebuilding and putting in a fiber cable or a fiber drop to each one of these houses? What kind of a construction program are we looking at?
Fiber drop. We want a piece of fiber into your home or your business. So that direct connection with a piece of fiber to your home or to your business.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Higgins, I see, Higgs.
Yes, I have a question. I live on Howe Island, and we're afraid that we're going to get left out because we're on an island, and we're not sure that we're going to get fiber over here. Is there any? Should we be concerned?
We certainly have you in our demand area, calculated in as being part of the service area. So whether it's a piece of a cable that has to go underwater, or perhaps, and I'm not the engineer, but it could be a microwave and then fiber to the home. But you're certainly in our demand area to get covered.
Thank you.
So Warden Vanderwall, I don't see any other questions. So if it's okay with you, we'll move on with the cell gap presentation. Is that all right?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thank you. And I want to start by, if you can move the next slide forward, maybe we'll move, and the next one. Oh, thank you. I want to start by thanking the warden and all county councilors and the staff at Frontenac County. As Jim said, you've been great supporters of EORN for the last 11 years. And I especially want to thank Frances Smith for being our vice chair over the past few years and all the support that she's given me and the entire EORN team. When we work together regionally, we can achieve great things like the Cell Gap project. And so I'm going to transition now. If Jim's been talking about, COVID has certainly highlighted the need for getting fixed broadband so that you can connect your computer to the internet and do all the things you need to do. At the same time, the importance of mobile broadband or cell service has become increasingly important. And we've been working on this with your support since 2014. It took 6 years to convince senior levels of government that this was a worthwhile project. And again, with a lot of advocacy and support. And once the decision was made to move forward with the project and provide the funding, then things moved very quickly. We hired a team, negotiated the contracts with the province, and kicked off the project. We went through a very competitive, open, transparent RFP process. And we're very pleased on March the 19th to announce that Rogers was the successful bidder on that. So we're here to tell you more about this project. And I'll introduce my colleagues from Rogers at the end of my portion. So next slide, please. I just wanted to remind councillors and everyone watching about the goals for our project. We want to achieve 99% coverage of the demand area, the areas where people live, where they work, and where they travel, with voice coverage across the region. And we'll show you a map of that in a few minutes. And that's important, as you can imagine, for traveling across Frontenac County and throughout the region. If you need to make an emergency call, But if you look at our other goal of 85% coverage of high definition video, that's also really important for residents to be able to use the kind of apps that we need to do your online banking and to do all kinds of things that we do with our mobile devices these days. So this was our goal for the project. And next slide, please. And in terms of what the project is going to look like, we have negotiated a contract with Rogers. Rogers and their other partners have 300 existing sites or towers across the region. And starting immediately, we'll be upgrading those to 5G. In order to get those goals that we talked about in the last slide, we'll also have to add, roughly speaking, 300 new sites across the region. They've already started work on upgrading the existing towers. And in our contract with the federal government and provincial government, we're scheduled to complete the work by 2025. We are very confident in our contract that we will meet and exceed the goals that we've suggested. And then we have service level agreements, and we get data back from Rogers on making sure that they maintain this investment over time as people's demand and use of mobile broadband and cell services grows. Next slide, please. I don't want to talk too much about the technology, but I did want to give you a sense that these are the normal kind of cell towers that you see across Frontenac County, and that Rogers has already started the process of land acquisition for hosting their towers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also wanted to reassure you, as many of you know, the federal government is still reviewing safety and security of radios, and Rogers uses Ericsson equipment, so there's nothing to worry about going forward in terms of putting radios into the network that might not be approved by the federal government going forward. So we've reviewed all of that, and the upgrades that start right now, they're going to enhance both 4G and 5G for the future. Next slide, please. So some of the county councillors and our board members, our former board members, will remember when we costed this out back, and we did multiple rounds of analysis, engineering, and costing. We thought that getting this coverage might cost around, the total project might be around $215 million. And through our competitive RFP process, and our negotiations with Rogers, this project is going to see an investment of around $300 million into the region. So our commitment from the Warden's Caucus and the mayors from counties like yours is a total of $10 million. And our commitment from the federal and provincial government is $71 million each. And that's a fixed amount. That's not going to go up. Rogers' contribution is going to be a minimum of 150 million. And as we build out and secure those tower sites, the total value of the project will come up to $300 million. I'll remind county councillors that we strive very hard to keep our administrative costs as low as possible. And administration means we hire engineers, project managers, financial people, lawyers to negotiate these agreements between ourselves and Rogers and ourselves in the province on your behalf. So we keep that down below 6%. Next slide, please. This is a map of the region, and the dots on the map will show you the 300 existing sites that are going to be upgraded. And as I said, that work has already started. As I mentioned, there's 300 new sites that will be coming in, and they're not on the map. And I'll explain why, because I know that many of the county councillors and most of the residents want to know, where are those new towers going? Right now, we know, with our partners at Rogers, we know that we need about 300 sites in order to reach that goal of the 99% coverage and the 85% for HD. But a tower and a location is only a theoretical location until Rogers is actually able to go through the process, find a willing landowner, and then go through the municipal land use approval process, which you actually have input and control on through your local municipalities. So until the local municipality approves the land use authority permit, that tower is not a real tower. We can't put it on the map. Once it's approved, then it's publicly available information, and we'll start adding those to our maps going forward. But if we go to the next slide, in terms of what that looks like for Frontenac County, the CAOs and the Wardens Caucus and the Mayor's Caucus worked out a financial agreement contribution based on population and geography and a number of other factors. And Frontenac County is contributing $389,000 to the overall project. If we go to the next slide. This is a map of Frontenac County. So we know that 14 existing sites will be upgraded to 5G, and that will start right away. And then over the 5 years, 10 to 20 new sites will be built across Frontenac County. And as soon as those get approved through the LUA process, we'll start adding them to the maps. And we hope that you'll invite us back for another presentation in a year or two once that's confirmed, and we can give you a better sense of what that's going to look like. Next slide, please. There are a lot of benefits to the project for the region. There are other carriers that have roaming agreements on Rogers. So if you are with a different provider, you'll actually get better service when you roam on the Rogers network. It will significantly upgrade their presence across the region. And the new towers will allow for deployment of future fixed wireless as well. One of the things that we were really pleased about, and Rogers will talk more about in their presentation, is that we were able to negotiate things that we call community benefits for our residents and businesses across the region. And Rogers has really come to the table on this, and they've already made some significant investments in the region, and we look forward to working with them on that as they go forward, and they'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. So right now, in order to start construction on the new towers, as I've already talked about, the existing upgrades are going forward. There's no construction on those. It's just a matter of, well, I say just a matter, it's a matter of rolling technical crews and going out to the towers and adding radios and backhaul. But the construction of new towers won't start until they go through the municipal land use approval process and until we complete our consultations with First Nations. We formally started those consultations in January of 2021, and informally, we actually started 14 months ago, letting the First Nations communities across our region know about this project. And we're hoping that they will see a benefit for their communities as well from enhanced cell service. These are some of the other timelines. As I mentioned, the official launch was on March the 19th. We had over 350 people participate virtually in that launch. And I'm pretty sure that a number of county councillors and members of staff attended that and heard about it. And in-service launches, every time new towers or a group of new towers goes live, residents will start receiving those services right away in terms of better coverage and better speeds and capacity. And we'll start doing launch events as those happen. And we'll make sure that we invite you to those. So if we could go to the next slide. So I'm actually going to suggest that we hold questions to the end of the Rogers presentation because they do answer a number of follow-on questions. And if I can, I'll introduce my colleagues from Rogers. Luis Ortega is the Senior Program Manager at Rogers, and Melissa Karras is the Director of Communications. They have a huge team that we're working with, and they've been great partners so far. And so I'm pleased to have Luis and Melissa join us. And if staff at the county could pull up the Rogers presentation, then I'll ask Luis and Melissa to turn on their video and they can start their presentation, and I'll come back on at the end and we're happy to answer any questions.
So I'm just pulling that presentation up now. It's just quite large, so it'll just take a minute to load on my screen. If you could just be patient, thank you.
Thanks very much. Well, we normally save questions till the end, but while the presentation is loading, if any of the county councillors have a question for me on my part, I'd be happy to answer it.
Great. Am I okay to get going?
We're good to go, Melissa. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Well, hello, Warden Vanderwall and all of the county councilors. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Melissa Karras, and I'm here representing Rogers Communications. And I'm just thrilled to be here today to take you through an overview of Rogers' partnership with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network to close the cell gap in Eastern Ontario. So if you can go to the next slide. I'll just cover off our agenda. And we're just here to cover the following. I'm going to start off with some background on Rogers and our involvement in the cell gap project and how we engage with the communities we work within. And then I'll pass it over to my colleague, Luis Ortega, and he'll take you through an overview of our 5G technology and the processes for building a new cell tower site and upgrading the existing sites over to 5G. We'll also take you through our expected timeline for delivery, and we'll review the coverage map for the region. And then, as David mentioned, we'll take your questions after that. So first, hopefully the technology will work. If we could just share a short video that gives you an overview of the purpose and values of Rogers. Go to the next one.
So my apologies. I actually have the PDF open as opposed to the actual PowerPoint presentation. So if you can just give me a minute, I will try and. The PowerPoint itself was so large, it just wasn't opening. But if you can give me a minute.
It's okay. It's fine because it will probably, if it's slowing you down that much, it may not work well. So I'll just let you know that this video, and we can share it afterwards if anyone wants to watch it. We have a link to it online. It's really just showcasing the purpose and values of Rogers. And, you know, at Rogers, we wake up every day with one purpose in mind, and that's to connect Canadians to a world of possibilities and the memorable moments that matter most in our lives. And I think that that's really what comes through in this video. But we can move on to the next slide. So, you know, we were thrilled to learn that we were chosen to be part of this unique public-private partnership. And we're committed to doing our part to eradicate the rural divide in Ontario, which is the province that Rogers actually calls home. And we're proud that our $150 million plus investment here will help to bring vital services to over 11,000 kilometers of major roadways. And as you've already heard, our plan to deliver voice calling service to at least 99% of the demand area in the 113 municipalities and the Indigenous communities of Eastern Ontario will also include the development of 300 plus new sites on top of the 300 or so existing sites that are already going to be upgraded to 5G. So it's really thrilling to be part of this project, especially because it's expected to help bring more than 3,000 new jobs to the region and over $420 million in economic growth. You can go to the next slide. So at Rogers, we consider it our responsibility to help lift up the communities we operate in and help them thrive. And this commitment to helping our communities runs long and deep, and you see it come to life really in three ways. First is through bridging the digital divide, and we believe that connecting Canadians to the digital world helps them thrive at school and work, setting them up for future success. And two examples of that is we have our Connected for Success program, which is offering high-speed, low-cost internet to subsidized tenants, seniors, families with children, and individuals who are receiving, disability or income support. And we also have the Women's Shelters program that we've been involved in for some time now, where we offer support and financial aid, and also devices and coverage plans to people that are in the women's shelter system. And recently we announced an expansion of this program, and we're reaching over 100 more shelters within Ontario, and many of them are within the Eastern Ontario region. The second way that we kind of bring our commitment to life is through our focused support towards programs that inspire youth to reach their highest potential. And to us, it's all about building the next generation of leaders, innovators, and change makers. And so a big example of this that's really relevant this week is we offer Ted Rogers scholarships. We just announced this today. You might have seen that in the news. So we've awarded now almost 1,800 scholarships over the last 4 years to youth across Canada, and that is about $2,500 per year of study for them. We also have our Ted Rogers Community Grants, which is grants that are provided to organizations that are making a meaningful difference in the lives of youth through things like STEM and innovation, mentorship, community leadership. And we are actively seeking input from Eastern Ontario communities to help us identify local organizations who we can support in the region. We also have programs such as the Jays Care Foundation, where we have programming initiatives with youth for things like building vital baseball infrastructure through our Field of Dreams initiative. There's Rogers Hometown Hockey, which is a tour to communities across Canada to share local stories and helping to build community pride and excitement around Canada's game. And we recently announced a partnership with Tennis Canada, where we will be building the year-round community tennis courts program. And that means creating new indoor tennis bubbles to help encourage local participation in the sport. And then the third way you'll see it is through our efforts in giving back locally to communities. And we encourage our employees to be active members of our communities by giving back to help others and keeping Canadians connected to the people and the things that matter most. And so this comes to life through our Give Together volunteer days. And this is a program where Rogers employees come together for 2 days to volunteer to communities across Canada. We had a challenge over the past year, which was our 60th year, to have 60,000 volunteer hours, and we just surpassed that goal, which is amazing, and we'll be looking to extend that. And as we have employees that live and work all through Eastern Ontario, they're going to be continuing to be very engaged within their local communities. And so we would love to keep this conversation open. We've been talking quite a bit with EORN and the various regions we've met with, and we want to hear from you and understand where we can best focus our efforts to help meet the needs that you have within your communities. So for now, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Luis Ortega, and he will take you through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as David mentioned, we're going to be installing 5G hardware in our existing sites and all the new sites that we plan to install in the region. And we're very excited about this. And I want to take a few minutes to explain why. When we talk about 5G, we're talking about the next generation of mobile wireless communication. You think about in the 80s, 1G was voice, and then the 90s, 2G, we had the ability to do some text messaging, global roaming, etc. 3G, 4G we have today has been significant improvement. We can do live streaming, we can do social media, we can do ride sharing. All of that is great. Well, 5G is going to be 10 times better. So it's going to be a fundamental change in the way we work and live today. And that's why we are so excited, because we believe by implementing this latest technology in the region, we will open a world of possibilities in terms of first responders, emergency medical services, farmers, utilities, you name it. So we're really excited about this. And we know out there might be concerns about safety around 5G. We want to assure you that the health and safety of all Canadians is of the most highly importance for us. And we are compliant with all the safety regulations in Canada, the Safety Code 6, which is a very strict code. But we also recommend that you visit EORN page. There is a very good resource posted there with reference to the World Health Organization, the Cancer Society, FDA, etc. Very reputable sources that can help you address any concern. And of course, we are open and willing to help work with you in case of any of your constituents have any concern, and help with education in this aspect. We do believe the benefits will be significant for the region. Next slide, please. So on the next two slides, I'm going to explain the process we're going to follow for the new sites and also for the upgrades. In the case of the new site builds, I know one of the questions we normally receive is, when are the sites gonna be ready in my region? And we're gonna explain that a new site can take north of 2.5 years to be ready. We think it's between 18 to 27 months from the start to end. And everything starts with, as David mentioned, an engineering request with a location. And we have to start going into those sites and finding the perfect location, and then going through the municipal approval process. And then is when we can start building, right? So right now we're in the process of doing site surveys in those locations where our engineers have recommended the location of those 300 plus sites. And as we are able to identify and secure locations that are suitable to our needs, then we will come to each one of the municipal councils for approval. And that's where you will have ability to influence and see firsthand what is that we plan to do with each one of those sites. And as we secure those sites, then we will be able to update our maps and come back here with updates in the future. Next slide, please. Now, the tower upgrades or uplifts, they take much less time than a new site. And actually, we are already working on some of these upgrades, as David mentioned. Here, it could be anytime between 4 months to 8 months to complete, depending on the amount of civil work that we might need to do on the towers. Some may require some reinforcement. Sometimes we need some engineering, etc. But it's a much faster process. And based on that, if we go to the next slide, please. And when we think about the timelines for this project, we think we're going to finish all the upgrades between this and next year. So by end of 2022, we're going to have all the towers, the 300 plus towers that we currently have in the region, upgraded with 5G and with additional capacity in our transmission backhaul. Now, as I explained, the new sites will take longer, so we don't anticipate to see a significant amount of new sites until summer 2023, when we will have probably around 25% of the sites constructed. And by 2024, when we plan to have approximately 50% of additional sites ready, is when I think we will really start seeing the benefits of the project materialize broadly in the region. And by July 2025, we need to have all the 300 sites installed. So these are our high-level timelines. We're happy to come back here in the future as we make progress on the approval process, the municipal approval process, with more refined timelines and more useful information for you in that regard. Next, please. So this is another similar view that what David shared before. These are all the sites we have in the region. We are going to upgrade them all. In particular, in Frontenac County, we're going to upgrade 14 sites, and we're going to install between 10 to 20 new sites. And what we expect at the end of 2025, please next slide, when we have the upgrades and the new sites all constructed, is that the coverage in the region will look like this. So as David mentioned, 99% of the areas where people live, work, and enjoy will have voice coverage, and then 95 will have a standard definition coverage, and 85% at a minimum high definition coverage. So we're confident with the design we have and the number of sites we have in the plan, we will make this possible. Next slide, please. So in the last slide of our presentation, we have some questions that we have received in similar meetings like this that we thought it would be good to proactively answer. I'm not going to go through all of them, just some of them. One we have received is about if there is a need to switch the cell phone provider. There is not, but we think at the end of this project, we will offer high quality coverage across the region with the standard, the service levels that we just explained. But there is no mandate to change. We think our coverage will be very good, will be world class. And I don't know the plans of our competitors, but definitely we can speak about the quality that the Rogers network will have. We have received inquiries about internet broadband, and really this project is about wireless coverage. That said, at the end of 2025, when we have all the network deployed and the 5G network deployed, of course, this opens the opportunity for rural areas or where it's very expensive or very difficult to build a fiber solution to use some wireless broadband solution. We don't think we're at that point yet, but as we deploy the network, there might be opportunities for this. I will jump to number 5. We have, if there is any interest in speaking to us about building towers in specific locations or properties, we have a resource now available on EORN's webpage, where anyone who wants to propose a site can offer the land and give us some additional details on location, and then that it's fit into our real estate department and engineering department, and we will contact those landlords and definitely explore those opportunities. And I think what we can offer to the community, Melissa already covered. So this concludes my presentation. I will be happy to take questions now. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thanks very much, Luis and Melissa. I believe Warden Vanderwells can't necessarily see the questions, and I have some in chat. So if it's okay with you, Warden Vanderwell, maybe I will facilitate the questions. Does that sound good? I think.
Sorry, if I could just ask a quick question, if it's okay, would you like me to stop sharing the screen and then more of the participants show up on the Zoom?
Yes, that would be great. Thanks. Okay, I did see there are some questions in the chat. I thought maybe we'd start and ask those first. So I see the first question, is the infrastructure meant for Rogers or other providers' new expansions? So the focus of the cell gap project is for meeting the goals of the enhanced cell coverage, as we've discussed. When those new towers go up, there will be opportunities for other services, and there is open access on the tower, but that will have to wait until we go through the land use authority process and we know where those are going to be. I see a second question on how does the 5G upgrade of towers relate to the delivery of fiber to the homes? What I would say in general is that one is for fixed broadband and the other is for mobile, so they're not really connected. So that's probably the best answer for that question. And then the last question I see online is, what is the backbone infrastructure to the current towers and what is the plan for the new 300 towers? Melissa or Luis, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can take that one, David.
Thank you.
So it's a mix of fiber and microwave, and depending on the location and the design, we will continue doing so in the new 300 towers. Hopefully we can do more on fiber, less on microwave, but in the current plans, it's a mix of both.
That's great. Thanks, Luis. And I'll just supplement that for us, the important thing when we went through the procurement is to make sure that we get the speeds and the coverage that we're looking for. And that once this investment is made, that Rogers continues to invest and maintain that over time. So whether it's fiber or microwave, it's more about getting the service. and I'm going to open it up to county councilors, but I saw there's a follow-on question, and who is doing the fiber that Jim Pine was talking about? So that is a proposal, a business case that we put into the federal and provincial governments. It's not approved or funded yet. It's something that we've been advocating for on your behalf. And I know Mayor Smith has been very active, and Warden Vanderwall and many others in the Frontenac area have been sending us information from residents in the post-COVID environment. People need the fixed broadband in order to participate in education, to work from home, and to access health services. So we certainly appreciated your support, but also the questions and comments from residents that are asking you about how and when they're going to get service. So maybe I'll open it up to county councilors, and if you want to either raise your hand or come off mute, and we'll try to answer your questions as best we can. I see Councillor Higgs.
Yes, we're on Howe Island, and we have a problem here with roaming. Our system roams to the U.S., especially on the south side of the island. Will the new system eliminate roaming?
I'm going to direct that to my colleagues at Rogers. I do believe it's part of an international agreement between Canada and the U.S., but I'll turn it over to you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
We are often charged with roaming charges because we're picking up a signal from the US side, and we have to phone often and get them canceled.
Okay, I see. So I will have to take that back to my colleagues in the engineering department. I do know the upgrades will help with the coverage and the capacity of existing towers. And as we deploy the network and you have better signals in different places in Eastern Ontario, that tendency, I would call, of the mobile to roam in a better network will reduce. But the specific situation in the border with US, I can take that back and come back with a better answer after.
Thank you.
Councillor Fowler?
Yes, one question, I got two questions actually, and they're sort of connected. Are all the 300 towers that you've shown on the map in the eastern area, are they all Rogers towers, or are they other providers own those towers as well?
Luis?
Sure, it's a mix. The majority of them will be new towers that we're gonna build, but we're also exploring co-location opportunities with other providers where it makes sense. So I think approximately 20-25% might be co-location in existing towers from other providers, and then the rest will be new towers.
Yeah, if I can supplement Councillor Fowler, like we do need new towers in order to get the coverage, but we want to minimize the proliferation of new towers as much as possible. So if there is an existing tower or something to share, we definitely try to do that. And I see you have a second question.
Yes, I do. In my area, we have a private company that's already went through the process. I think they have the land use agreement in place and all that. And they are an independent company. Will Rogers put their equipment on that tower if they ask?
So Luis, go ahead, Luis.
No, we will definitely evaluate. We do consider the location in terms of how they contribute to the coverage to the demand area as defined by EORN. But if it makes sense, we will definitely explore that option. So if there are specific details that you can share with us in terms of location, we will be more than happy to evaluate that.
My understanding is that tower has been approved, and they're just waiting for people to order space on their tower, and then they'll build it. And that's, I just want to ensure that Rogers can put their equipment on that type of tower.
Councillor Fowler, what I'll suggest is on the EORN website, there's a section that says if someone is interested in providing land or has a tower that they want Rogers to consider, you can go in and put the information in, and that gives, we just forward that on to the Rogers group that's looking at this. But it really depends on if it's in an area where they need to have more radios to increase the coverage.
It definitely is an area that needs coverage.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll just encourage them to go on the EORN website and put that information in, and it'll get through to the senior site acquisition folks at Rogers.
Well, they're in the business of building towers, so I'm sure they've already done that. I just wanted some sort of assurance that I can tell people around here. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald, I see, has a question. Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor McDonald.
Hold your space bar down, Bill. You've got to hold it down, Bill.
Okay, I'll hold it down. Is this program going to be phased in over the period as you accumulate sites for the towers and stuff? Will the program only become available once the complete program has been put in place?
Great question, Luis. Do you want to start with that?
Thank you for the question. Definitely, we are not going to wait. The upgrades are in progress as we speak. So every upgrade we finish, we put it in commercial service. We optimize the area around that tower, and we plan to do the same with the new towers. So as we materialize the execution of new towers, you will start seeing improvements in local areas. But we do think the clusters, which is what is going to bring the benefit to specific cities or areas, will take longer to deploy. But we're not going to wait until the end. We're going to put in service as we deploy upgrades and new sites.
Any other questions from councillors? I don't see any other questions. Mr. Warden and county councillors, let me again thank my colleagues, Luis and Melissa, and our communications team at EORN, Jim and Lisa and their group for all their support. And as Luis said and Melissa said, we look forward to coming back and reporting to you as those towers start to go up. So thank you very much, Mr. Warden. We appreciate your time and your interest and your support.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt here. Warden Vandewaal, are you still on the call? So Deputy Warden Doyle, are you able to take over the meeting?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, sorry. Yes, we can hear you, Warden Vandewaal. Thank you.
Okay, somehow we were muted or whatever. Anyway, we did have a question here from a councillor for, I guess, Rogers. Are they still there?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Yeah, we're still here.
Go ahead,
Perfect,
Councillor
thank you.
Maury.
So my question was, I do understand that this particular presentation is covering County of Frontenac, but my curiosity, I guess, is this tied in with a larger partnership with EORN, and how that these 300 particular towers might line up with any larger project and delivery by, as you say, 2025?
So thank you, Councillor. Maybe I'll address that. The 300 towers are across the region, and it will provide that 99% coverage of voice across all of Eastern Ontario. We do a standard presentation. We're on a roadshow to all the county councils and city councils, and so we do talk generally about the region, but we try to also provide specific information for each one of the stakeholders for the county.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, does anybody have a question? If not, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Luis and Melissa, for doing the presentation. And at this time, I guess I'll turn it over to Jeanette. Do we have to do the bylaw?
That's correct, Warden Vandewall. We do have a resolution here for the confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Revel. Resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce bylaw A that has been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaw A be read a first and second time.
I guess I'm just going to have to assume everybody's in favor. If I don't hear a no, then we will go to third reading. Okay.
So that's carried for third reading. It's moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Revel, that bylaw A be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
Any comments? If I don't hear a no, it's carried. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time tonight to go through this presentation.
And
Thank
Warden
you.
Vandewall, we just have one more motion for adjournment, and that's moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Higgs, that the meeting hereby adjourn at 6:12 p.m.
I assume everybody's in favor. If there's anybody opposed and wants to stay on this by themselves, speak now. Carried.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, folks.